right, so the last couple weeks, as Paul and Anil come up, we have looked at 3 different topics. Let me just quickly remind you what those topics are, and then we will invite you to ask some questions this morning as well. 3 weeks ago, good? You guys good? 3 weeks ago, I spoke on the topic of worship, and we talked about that worship is more than just singing or gathering on Sunday morning. It reflects what we value most in life. Our hearts, our actions, our thoughts, our emotions reveal our worship, showing who or what truly occupies the throne of our hearts. When we worship God with a sincere devotion and align our lives with His truth, we are transformed to reflect His image. Worship is an ongoing, wholehearted response to God's greatness, requiring both our spirit and truth as we draw closer to Him. A couple weeks ago, Paul spoke on the topic of Sabbath. Sabbath is a gift from God to us, one that, friends, that we desperately need in the busyness of our lives because many of us are busy, and burning out and exhausted. I was reading a book this week and was sharing it about it this morning. The author was saying, we will either practice Sabbath or Sabbath will be forced on us because we will burn ourselves out or get sick by sickness. And so we have the choice of trying to be healthy or not be healthy. But some way or another, we will practice Sabbath. And sometimes it will be forced on you because of your body cannot handle it. But Sabbath enables us to support one another, offering and creating spaces for rest for those of us who need it the most. The Sabbath helps us remember that life is more than just constant striving. It's about finding peace in God's presence and trusting Him to meet our needs. And last week, Kaylee, this is not Kaylee, spoke to us on the topic of community. Kaylee's out of town, so Anil, there's no better person to talk about community than Anil, because he is like the embodiment of what community is. And so Kaylee talked about that we are created for community, that we are designed to share life and grow together in Jesus. The Christian community goes beyond just social gatherings and even more than just gathering on Sunday morning. It's a commitment to care deeply, to support each other's needs, and to help one another become like Jesus. While community is challenging, it often has differences or misunderstandings. It shapes us into God's family, where we learn to love, where we learn to forgive, where we learn to encourage one another. And through community, we experience joy and accountability and the unity that God desires for His people. And what we want to do this morning, like we did a couple weeks ago, is we've talked about this, and it's easy for you to hear this and say, okay, I've got more knowledge about this, but then never practice it. And so this morning, we want to make it really practical. We want to invite you to ask questions, and so there's going to be a number on the screen that you are invited to text questions to us. So you could text your question to 972-233-5638 on any of these topics, just these topics, all right? Let's focus on these things, and our hope is that we can answer some questions so that you can go over the next several weeks and pick one of these 3 things and practice it over the next month. After this, we've got 3 more that we're going to cover, and then we're going to do another one of these panels. And the hope is that you would practice one of those. You don't have to do all of them. I mean, you could try if you want, if you're motivated, but try to do at least one over the next several months. And so go ahead and you're welcome to text your questions to us. And while you do, I'm going to begin by, why don't you guys talk quickly about why community matters to you, why Sabbath matters to you. And you could also talk on worship since you are one of our worship leaders. So you've got multiple things that you could cover this morning. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Is this on?
Yep.
Well, let me address the elephant in the room first. We did not plan to match.
Oh, look at that. That's so cool.
I actually changed into this outfit right before we left. You can ask Lucas. So don't know how that happened, but just guided by the Spirit. There you go. So why is community important? Is that what you're I think community is important just because I think for me, I would say it's a reminder that we don't go through life alone. And I think especially over the pandemic, we learned how life can be so isolating, right? And I think the pandemic forced us to isolate. And I don't know how many of you enjoyed that. I think even the most introverted of us didn't enjoy that as much as maybe we thought we would. So I think for me, just one answer would be community, I think, is a reminder of how important it is to live life together.
Yeah, so Sabbath has been very important for me and my family because it has just helped us learn that we as people created by God we're meant for rest, and God created us for work, but as well as to rest and to slow down and to be able to reflect on what's going on in our lives and be able to reflect and worship and just lean into who he is and just be able to do that without many of the distractions and the worries and the anxieties that bother us on a day-to-day basis. And so it's a different kind of rest than the rest that we're often told that we need to earn or kind of just do it when you can sort of a thing. And I think that's why it's become so important to our family. Yeah.
And I think worship reminds me that the world doesn't revolve around me. I think the danger often is I think everything has to revolve around me, and worship reminds me that God is greater and God is bigger, and that I live for him. He doesn't exist for me, right? And so worship, whether it's in the context of gathering here or in my life is about Jesus, and it is for Jesus and for his glory as well. Go ahead and start sending questions in. As questions come in, I will ask these folks. But let's start with Sabbath, because that's probably one of those practices that are fairly new for a lot of folks here. It's we live in a busy world. People say, hey, I have no time. I always have things to do. Weekends are busy, catching up on home stuff. During the week, I'm working. Kids are there. Evenings are busy. So practical steps of things that we could do to Sabbath. Like, what are some things that we could do so that we're truly able to rest and disconnect and work from work and the demands of other people?
Yeah, I'd say starting out is just, if you want to take practical steps in the Sabbath, like you have to be able to kind of just start where you're at. It's great if you can give a whole day to Sabbath and you can truly try and lean into that. But if you do not have a whole day, if you can take 2, 4, 6, like 8 hours to just have that intentional rest and to be able to just kind of disconnect from your distractions, disconnect from your work.
Can I pause real quick?
Yeah.
The phone number's wrong, and it's my fault. So if you've texted, it's 214-233. Dallas is way too many area codes. So 214-233-5638. So if you have sent it, resend it. So, and if someone is getting angry at you, tell them Jesus loves you, and I'm so sorry. So 214-233-5638. So go for it. Sorry.
Yeah. So start slow, and remember, like, this is like we're having grace in ourselves to be able to rest in the first place. But I know for a lot of us, maybe even all of us in this room, just the idea of having a rhythm of rest is hard because you feel like you should be doing something. And on Sabbath, the point is to not do anything at all, but to do something that you would truly delight in, that would truly give you rest. Something like reading a book, or something like enjoying just a cup of coffee. Like, so the really simple things that we often take for granted because we're going on to the next thing, and we're moving on to the next thing, and we're moving on to the next task, the next work thing, the next family thing, whatever the case may be. Just being able to slow down, it gives you a different appreciation for the things that the Lord has made and the things that he has given us. And so I'd say starting out, if you can pick your set of time that works for you, pick your activity that like, is not going to be a distraction, is not going to be mindless, something that will help you truly be able to delight, something that you enjoy, and your mode of worship that you would like to do with the Lord, just pick those things and start out, try it out. It's not going to be easy to do at first, but it is something that takes practice like any other spiritual discipline. It'll take some time, so have some patience on yourself.
Very cool. What about community? How do you make space in our lives to build genuine connections, especially for those who are different from us and who we may not know well?
Ask Pastor Sam.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Starting with a real hard one. So I think for me, I'll just answer personally. I think spending time with people in person makes a difference for me, and breaking bread together. I know we joke about it here, that eating is a spiritual gift of ours here at LOFT, but all joking aside, I do think breaking bread together makes a big difference. And I think in my experience, that's what's helped with those conversations, those difficult conversations where there are differences of opinion, differences of how we should approach a situation. I think sitting together face to face, breaking bread, being vulnerable, because I think when you eat, you're the most vulnerable, right? I mean, how many of you enjoy eating in front of people? Yeah, there you go, right? But I think for me, I think it's where I'm the most vulnerable is when I'm eating in front of someone. And so I think sitting around the table, breaking bread, gives us to me, is one of the best opportunities to have those difficult conversations and build trust, and be able to listen. Yeah. Maybe because your mouth is full of food, you can actually listen to what that other person is saying.
I'll piggyback off of that. There's a big event happening like a few days from now that everyone is nervous about. And a few weeks ago, I was sitting with a bunch of pastors, and they're all panicking and worried. And I was like, man, I don't have that anxiety. I don't have that nervousness. I did 2020, and I think in 2020, there was a season where all of us were isolated from each other. And instead of knowing each other as people made in the image of God and valuing and giving respect to each other, because we spent a lot of time together, because we were isolated, we cared more about what people posted or their opinions or thoughts. But over the last several years, our intentionality of connect groups, of saying, hey, be together, spend time together, there's a genuine feeling that, man, we might disagree, but they're still made in the image of God. And so that nervousness that other folks have, I'm not as anxious. So we haven't talked a lot about the elections here, because I think at the end of the day, we are called to value, love each other. This is the community that God has placed us. Is the world a really hard place right now? Yes. But I think when we're in community, we can love and encourage each other. And often that community happens over a meal, right? When you look at Jesus, I mean, how many conversations did he have over a table? How much did he spend? Some of the best conversations are when he was having meals with people. The table that we celebrate week in and week out was a meal, right? The meal is so significant that Jesus valued it, and the invitation of community together, be together, spend time together, share a meal together is so, so valuable. So, all right, let's do this one. Sabbath. Is Sabbath on a Saturday? Is it on a Sunday? What is Sabbath? When do we practice it?
I brought up in my sermon that there's other groups of believers and other groups that practice Sabbath that say that it is supposed to be on Saturday. From what I've gathered and from what the Lord has kind of showed me in Sabbath, there is not we're not in a mode of it has to be on a particular day of the week. Sabbath is still a very important practice that we should put into our lives, and just whatever day can work for you, and whatever day, because the whole idea is you're going to work 6 days and then you're going to have that rest. And so whether that Sabbath lies on Saturday or Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or whatever day works for you, just have it on that day, and just be prepared to lean into it. It's something where I genuinely believe that the Lord has still wanted us to practice this. And in the early church, like I said, as they went from Saturday to Sunday, the two were synonymous. Of the Sabbath day and the Sunday worship, they were viewed the same in the eyes of the early church. And so, no matter what day you choose to practice it on, and whatever day works for you, just be concerned about what the Sabbath is supposed to be to us in the spirit of the way God designed it for us, and not the day.
So all the questions are on Sabbath or community. There's nothing on worship. So I think you guys are doing really, really good on worship. So, but we will we'll continue on Sabbath. What do you say to someone who says, the church service I attend is my Sabbath? Why do I need another day?
And I would say this, for the church service, it's a gathering of community, and community is really important on Sabbath. The reason that Dom and I practice it on Saturday is because we're in ministry here at LOFT, and so LOFT is Sunday is kind of a work day for us, and so we practice on Saturday because that is our kind of freely available day. And so if you meet a person, they say, hey, Sunday morning is my Sabbath, ask them what they're doing with the rest of their day. Because coming here and gathering community is very restful. But if the rest of their day is preparing for work and mowing the lawn and catching up on things and trying to continue to be in a mode of getting things done, then that's not a Sabbath. That's a very kind of watered down, half-hearted Sabbath that a lot of us have been kind of shown as what Sabbath is. But Sabbath, when it's practiced as it is, whether Sunday morning you come and you gather with your community and you worship and you share meal, and then you come home and then you don't work or think about work or think about everything that needs to get done and everything that's going on in the world, and you just rest and do something that you delight in with the rest of your day. Maybe continue to meet with your community for the rest of the day. Ask them what they're doing with the rest of their day, because if it's just Sunday morning, then that's not a Sabbath.
Sabbath can be tied to our worship. I mean, I think for many of you, Sunday is probably the ideal day to Sabbath, right? It's starting Saturday night, resting early, then coming in Sunday, ready to worship, being in community, and then being intentional, saying, hey, Sunday, I'm not going to be busy myself. I'm not going to do work. I've taken care of that on Friday, taken care of that on Saturday. So Sunday is actually a day to rest. I think the other thing of Sabbath, and I think you've covered this in your sermon, Sabbath isn't just about the things you don't do. It's also about finding the things that bring you joy and delight, right? Sharing a meal with folks, playing games with your kids, doing things that bring you delight, sleeping. That's part of Sabbath. It's whatever that renews, refreshes you so that you are reminded of God's goodness and kindness in your life. Good. All right. Question, Anil, for you. How do we grow in community when the physical distance, living in different suburbs, prevents easy access to one another during the week, and even weekend with schedules are packed with kids' activities, etc.? Any advice or suggestions that have helped you to close that physical gap when your children are younger? That's a good one.
That's a tough one. Keep giving me the hard ones. So I think that's a big problem for us here, right? Because we live in the DFW metroplex, right? No one lives right around the corner from each other for the most part. I think what has been helpful for us, especially when our kids were younger, was perhaps finding common activities to attend, perhaps, right? Perhaps it's just a day at the park, just having our kids play together at the park, or perhaps it's utilizing babysitting services to maybe go out as couples or just individuals, go to a movie, just something that's maybe not so taxing on your mind. I think that's what I have found helpful, is just finding some common activities where distance can be overcome because you're going to meet in a central location. I think that's helpful, but I know that's not an easy one with little ones. I do think there's value also in the good old-fashioned phone call. I think we're really good at texting. I'm not saying I'm great at phone calls, but I do find that sometimes just getting on the phone can be helpful, and just having conversation, being able to have, as parents, I think many of us require vent sessions, right? So I think sometimes that's been helpful too, not just for work, but I think for family too. It's good to have that time to maybe just have real conversations, right? I think a lot of times we get caught up in having the fluffy conversations, but I think sometimes it's important to also maybe give each other calls and just say life is hard, and want to share that with somebody that I can trust and build community with. Hope that's helpful.
What are some of your favorite Sabbath activities?
Yes. This is the part that excites me. So one of my favorite things to do is, I like to take, like Dom and I like to take our son Remy on walks, and it's just literally like we'll go to either like a park or like a nature preserve. Like they have one out in Plano that we really like. There's parks just right down the street from where we live that we really enjoy, and I really enjoy that because because we're freeing ourselves from distractions and doing our best not to think about work. Yeah, I just noticed things that, because we take Remy on walks like kind of all throughout the week, but it becomes something a lot different when we just don't have 100 things on our mind trying to weigh us down. And I noticed things about Remy, and even about like Dom, that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. I know Dom really likes to read on Sabbath. It's something that she quite enjoys doing. I like to play a video game or two on Sabbath. It's something I try not to play like mindless games. I try to play something that's gonna actually be really nice and fulfilling, where I could just kind of take an interest in a story and in a fun video game. Been playing Mass Effect recently, and also we just like to share meals together, and especially with community. Like that's probably been one of the most life-giving things about Sabbath. And we haven't been able to meet recently as much, but just being able to invite a couple people over who are, either in the midst of their Sabbath or just beginning their Sabbath, and just having a very low stress kind of meal together, as in not stressing about like what's being cooked or like trying to make something like super immaculate. Just bringing food over, whether it's cooked in the home or it's bought from the store, and just enjoying time with each other, and just being able to really love each other well, and just be in a space where all of us are not worrying about, we may talk about things that are going on and things that we kind of need to get out, but being in a space where we're not being overly concerned and being weighed down by the things that are going on. Yeah.
The introverts are asking. Several of them, including the husband and the wife. They're both introverts. Hosting gives them stress. Meeting new people is stressful. They feel bad, and they don't find the same joy that they think they're supposed to. What are they missing? Like, how do introverts do community well? So, yeah.
This is really hard as an extrovert to answer that question. If you know me, I'm not an introvert. I don't think it's a bad thing to be an introvert. But I do think, I guess, what are you missing? I think perhaps it's kind of some of the activities that Paul described. Maybe it's getting more involved in gaming or books, maybe having things that you can talk about, commonalities that you can talk about in a more comfortable setting. I think again, I don't think it's bad to be an introvert. I think what you're missing though is the opportunity to do life together. So I would encourage you to keep trying to host or accept the invitation if someone invites you over. Perhaps it's smaller settings. I think even our Connect groups can sometimes be intimidating because we've got 7 or 8 people, maybe more, if there are kids involved, right? So perhaps it's those larger settings that can be intimidating. But I think I would encourage you to press into still having times of fellowship with others. If maybe it's figuring out what the size of that gathering looks like for you that's comfortable. But I don't think you need to measure success by how many people you have fellowship with. I think it's more it's the quality of that fellowship. Are you able to share life together? And if that's just with a couple of people, that's okay. I don't think you have to be in this giant group to say that you have enjoyed fellowship. So I don't know that you're necessarily missing anything. I think it's more finding out what's comfortable for you to be with others and to be able to be open and build trust. Does that help? Hopefully.
I think there's 2 sides. Someone texted a thought of introverts need to keep community small, so start with one person. You don't have to do a lot. But also I think thinking through like what's healthy rhythms for you, right? If you're an introvert, you don't need to be a nil and meet a new person every day. Say, hey, I can meet someone once every other week. But at the end of the day, you don't want this to burn you out, but you also don't want to completely isolate yourself where you're missing out on the beauty of community that God has given you. So find 1 or 2 people that invest into your life. You don't have to be in large groups all the time. Like large groups can be exhausting. I'm an introvert. After this, I will go take a 3-hour nap because I've met way more people than I enjoy, right? I love this, but it exhausts me, right? That totally came out wrong. This is why I don't enjoy talking. But yeah, but I mean, I need a Sunday afternoon nap because my body is exhausted, my mind is exhausted. So you have to figure out like what's healthy for you, what's good for you. All right, next question. Some worship questions here. Some things in your day-to-day that would be considered worship outside of musical worship. Again, worship is being reminded of who God is, right? It's making God front and center. I think we talked about this in our last panel. Setting reminders on your phone of like, hey, stop and pray. Stop and be reminded of who God is. Starting your morning in another discipline that we'll talk about here in a few weeks of silence and solitude, of just starting your day just quiet before God, just saying, God, I'm going to sit and just enjoy your presence. That's worship. Worship is like when you're having a meal, like just that simple prayer of, God, thank you for the fact that I can enjoy this meal is a gift from you. It is a blessing from you, right? That is drawing and bringing God into your everyday, that you are reminded that God is, that you are in worship. Your life is worship to Jesus. The intentional conversation, God, if you are leading me, how are you guiding my conversation? Who are you calling me to bless? How do I worship you by serving others? By sending an encouraging text or an email or calling someone, whatever that may be. So there's very easy ways to, we just have to make it part of our rhythms, part of our practices, so that otherwise you can get so busy and life becomes completely about you. So, all right, so something on Sabbath here. Where was that? For parents who need rest, how do you decide when to Sabbath alone and when to Sabbath with others, for example, your spouse or kids?
Yeah, so, so for Dom and I, we kind of, our son Remy, he's almost 2 years old, and so, he's part of our Sabbath, and He is a part of resting. And since we're kind of disconnecting from everything else, it does make like being with Him and taking care of Him more restful than it usually would be. But I think in that instance, Dom and I talk about, we ask each other the question like, okay, what do we want to do as a family where we can delight together? And what do we want to do individually where we can kind of delight individually, or we can have our own worship to the Lord, or we could do our own activities of delight. We usually do that once Remy is taking a nap or once Remy goes to sleep. I know not all of us have kids who are young enough to still be taking naps, but just have that conversation with your family. Just kind of, if you feel like you need to do something maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more isolated for you to just be alone with the Lord, talk about that. I mean, sometimes I will ask Dom like, hey, can I just go spend an hour in a coffee shop by myself and just spend some time with the Lord, because I think on the Sabbath I could really use it. And we talk about those things and we sort those things out, and we kind of plan for it, and we also open ourselves up, because things might pop up, and Sabbath is meant to be something that is flexible and also planned. And so just have conversations as a family about what the both of you as husband and wife will need for both individual just delighting and resting, and what you guys can do all together as a family to do the same thing.
I'll give you another one. What do you do when your spouse thinks that taking a nap for Sabbath is being lazy or wasting time?
God, I'm trying to answer this tactfully. That's understand, so this person is hearing me that Sabbath is supposed to be such a day of intentionally slowing down. And if sleep is one of those things, let it be that. This is not supposed to be something where we're supposed to be kind of judging each other for what our Sabbath activities are. And we also have to remember that a lot of the views of these kind of Sabbath activities that we might do are kind of just filtered in a lot from our experiences and the society that we live in, and the things that we view as either lazy, or things that are either not productive or helpful, or things that are conditioned. Now, if you probably don't want to spend the entire day just sleeping, because then there's other questions to ask after that. But if it is restful and it gives you delight, and it helps you to respond in worship to the Lord, to take a nap, to spend a couple of extra hours just resting on a day where you're intentionally supposed to be slowing down and letting go and giving things up to the Lord, then do it. It's not, there is a, like Sam said, is about what we don't do, but it's also about what we do. And so if a nap would be something that you can delight in, please, by all means, nap.
Yeah. I mean, I think the invitation of Sabbath is not to work, right? So in the world's eye, it is being lazy, wasting time, because we are taught, be productive, go work. Don't waste time. And Jesus is saying, no, you don't have to work all the time. You will exhaust yourself. You will burn yourself out, right? I mean, I think the creator of the universe, just speaking words into existence, still took the seventh day and he rested. He rested. God rested, and he invites us to rest. And if nap is part of that rest, then praise God that he has blessed you with time to rest and enjoy it, delight in it. That day should be a day where you find spaces to do the things that you enjoy and delight. That means, if you're intentionally blocking off some time to Sabbath, that means you try to get everything done before then, right? So that there isn't a to-do list still that you're worried about or concerned about. Or you make sure whatever's left are things that you could do after Sabbath, but you're not stressing about those things on Sabbath day. So knowing I've got these times blocked off where I'm going to rest, I'm going to enjoy family, I'm going to enjoy a good meal, I'm going to enjoy playing games with the kids, I'm going to enjoy a good movie, whatever that may be, that God has given me space to slow down from the things that consume my time in my life so that I could just enjoy life. Like, I think the danger of our society is we work, and we don't enjoy life. And we wait for vacations, but vacations come far and few in between, and then the rest of it, we burn ourselves out. And that's not from Jesus. That's not from God. Like, he wants us to be healthy. He wants us to enjoy every day. And he wants us to be able to rest so that vacation isn't that time where we're renewed so that we can go back into the busyness of life. So, all right. A couple of people have asked, I'll put some of these together. How do you make space for a community when you yourself are tired and busy? So that goes to both of you. But then how do you make space for community when you're hurt because you constantly are inviting people, and you feel like you're the initiator and they're not responding to you and they don't have time to spend time with you? How do you continue to pursue community there?
By all means.
Paul, you don't have an answer for that one? Okay. That's a tough one. Wow, you guys ask hard questions. I think, I've experienced that, right? I mean, I can be overly extroverted, right? And I want to hang out with everybody and spend time with everyone. And I think it can be hurtful, right, when it's not reciprocated. But I think I've had to pause and perhaps ask myself, why am I reaching out? Is it to receive something back? Of course, yes. There's a part of me that wants fellowship back and wants what I'm giving back, right? But I don't think that's what God wants of us, right? Is that we give to get something back. And so, if we're blessed with resources, if we're blessed with opportunities to lift others up and care for them, I think like the reminder for me is I'm not doing it to get something back. It's because God's blessed me with an opportunity to open my house, whether that means to host, if that's God's given me resources that I can bless someone else. It's not done so that I get something back, even though it can be hurtful, right? That it's not always reciprocated. And I know some of us in this room have had conversations around that. But I think in the end, it's kind of that sacrificial love that I think that Jesus expects of us, is that we give of what we have so that we can bless others. And in the end, it's the Lord that blesses us. It's not going to be because we got something back from that person. But I don't want to minimize the hurt. I think that's valuable and that's real. But I would encourage you to press into those opportunities you have to bless others, whether that means something comes back to you or not. I think in the end, that's kind of the sacrificial, unconditional love that I think the Lord expects of us and has demonstrated for us in greater ways than we could. So yeah, I would again not minimize that hurt, but I would encourage you to keep pressing in. And I think the Lord works in the hearts of those that you bless, and that I think will be the blessing that comes back to you. Hope that helps.
I can answer the tired one. Yeah. So I mean, like, I think this is different for all of us because, I mean, as Sam talked about earlier, I mean, some of us are like really introverted, and we get to the end of like a busy day or a busy week, and the idea of being around people, just thinking about it, is exhausting. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of actually getting around people is exhausting. So I would just encourage you to just find kind of ways to just be honest about where you're at with your community, and be honest and be like, hey guys, I need time to myself, or I just need time me and my family, is it okay if we like kind of push back or don't meet? But also kind of discern whether you need to be around community anyway, even though you're tired, because you never know what the Lord will bring to you or bring to another person when we get around people, even when we don't want to. I think there is a value in trying to discern and ask the Lord, like, do I need to be around community, even though I really don't want to, or do I just need to take time to myself? Like one of my closest friends is a guy that is like super extroverted, and I remember when we were in college, like I struggled to tell him that I didn't want to hang out. Like when I didn't want to hang out with him, and it wasn't anything against him. I was just tired. But I remember there being a very distinctive day when I decided to hang out with him anyway, and the Lord, we were able to have like a really good conversation about some things that he was going through. And you never know how you will be blessed if you decide to be around community, even if it's exhausting. So it just discern, also be honest.
We've got some really, really good questions here. We've got like 5 more minutes, and we'll do what we did last time. We'll record some of the answers, and there's some of their questions that are really good questions. I feel like a short answer today would be almost injustice, because there's a little bit more deep dive into that. So we'll make sure we record some videos that will go on our Instagram page. So advertisement goes like or follow or whatever we do on Instagram, like that, follow that, like our Facebook page. It's all going to be on there in the next several weeks. We'll do one more question for each of us. Someone asked if giving of our tithes is a form of worship. How do I know I'm giving enough? Now, this is a deep one. It's probably one that we could do video of, but like, if you're not giving, I think you've got to ask, who are you worshiping, right? Like, I think there's a question there. And I don't think the amount is what matters. I think it's the heart, right? Jesus, one of the best stories in Scripture is the woman who puts 2 little coins in Scripture, and Jesus sees her and recognizes her and just says, hey, her heart was in the right place. And there were a bunch of other people who were throwing a bunch of money, and but they were doing out of obligation, out of ritual, to be seen. And so giving isn't about being seen by others. It's about your heart to Jesus. It is a worship. It is just acknowledging, like we hear. I said it earlier, our giving is worship. It's us acknowledging that, God, you are good and you are great, and all that I have is from you. And so if 50 cents is the best you could give in worship to Jesus. If you can give more, give in worship to Jesus. Give because you are in worship to Jesus. Like, we are invited to be generous people. One of the last disciplines we're going to be looking at is the discipline of generosity. So we'll dive more into that. But the question of giving enough, like, you know when you're giving enough. You know when, like, as each of us as followers of Jesus, the Holy Spirit resides in us. Listen to the Spirit. Like, don't give out of guilt or condemnation. Listen to what the Spirit is saying. If He says, give more, give more. If He says, hey, you give as God leads you, right? Just be obedient to Jesus, and then you, out of that, then it should still be worship in your giving as you give, right? So hopefully that answers that. All right, question on this one. I don't find it difficult to rest from work on a Sabbath, but I feel like I'm still thinking about work. What tips do you have to stop thinking about the work that you're not doing on Sabbath? So.
Yeah. This is a hard thing at first, because even like though we're not doing work, we could still be thinking about work, and often it's taking up our headspace and it's causing us to to struggle to lean into Sabbath because we're constantly thinking about something else. I would challenge you to just kind of on a Sabbath day, one of the things that Dom and I do is we put our phones on Do Not Disturb, or even just turn them off completely. Like, if you need to tell like your work people or your family or whatever the case may be that, hey, my phone is on Do Not Disturb. Like, if you need something, like reach out by other means or whatever the case may be. Like, I would disconnect and disconnect from. I would even say disconnect from the internet, disconnect from your email, work email or regular email, whatever the case may be. Like, just those things that would give you a reminder of like, hey, this is what's going on at work, or hey, this person needs me, or hey, like this particular thing is going on in the world, or hey, I saw this thing on social media that really made me angry. Like, disconnect from all that and realize that it's going to take some practice. It's going to take some time, and you're not always going to do it perfectly. Dom and I have our days where we do not do this perfectly, and I'm worrying about work, or Dom is worrying about work, or I'm struggling to like let go of what I'm seeing on the news, or we're worried about finances, or we're worried about family, or whatever the case may be. And none of those are bad things to be concerned about. But on this day, like, realize that if we're going to rest, we need to remember that these things are still going to be here when our Sabbath is done. That these things, work is always going to be there. That the world is always going to be there. I mean, hopefully, and like the things that we need to get back to are going to be there when we're done. So let's just focus on being able to rest and delight and worship, and to just, and probably above all else, just enjoy it. Enjoy the fact that we're slowing down and able to like take the time to intentionally rest. Enjoy it. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to be this or that on the Sabbath, but just enjoy the day and enjoy the people and the things around you.
All right, here's one for you. How important is it to allow folks to question their faith or aspects of their faith in community without ostracizing those who have questions? I can take it if you don't want it. But,
No, I think
yeah.
I think that's a big part of being in community, right? Is that you can have those real conversations, right? Like I said before, I think if all of our conversations are just about all the good stuff, that everything's fine, everything's going well, I don't think we're being real with each other. I think those times where we are struggling, even with our faith, being part of a community like this, I think helps us get through it. I would, of course, recommend talking to someone like Pastor Sam. I'm not saying you don't talk to him, but I do think being part of this community makes a difference, right? To have a safe place to question your faith and to question where you are in your walk. I think if we aren't serving each other in that way, I think we've missed a big piece of what we should be doing as community. So I would highly encourage that, and I would expect that we as a community would welcome that, that this is a safe place to have those questions, to have those doubts, to have those things that perhaps you're angry about with the Lord or with the community, that you can honestly ask those questions, you can vent, you can have a place where you can get all of that out, but also being vulnerable enough to have conversation around it, to wrestle through that together. I think that's something I have definitely benefited from over the years, being part of this community, is being able to wrestle through those difficult things together, not just the fun stuff, but also the difficult things. So I would highly encourage that.
Yeah, I would say two sides. If you are struggling, well, let's talk about the group. Like, we have to be a place that says, hey, we're all on this journey together. Some of us might be here, some of us might be here, but the hope is more and more we are becoming more like Jesus, right? And the way that we do that is in the context of community. We're not trying to force people out of community, right? We need each other wherever we are in that journey. The challenge is often when you start having doubts or having questions, oftentimes what I see is people just pull away from community because you're afraid to ask those questions. And let me encourage you, that's the worst thing, because community helps you process through that. Community helps you wrestle through that. And so when we've got to create a safe space where questions are okay. Doubts are okay. The disciples had a lot of questions. Jesus never pushed them away, right? He welcomed them in. And so, like, that space should be okay. And sometimes you might be pushed and challenged. It's not because we don't love you. It's because we actually do love you. And so the invitation is, hey, as you're wrestling through doubts, as you're wrestling through questions, push into community, because community might give you input and feedback that could help you grow in that. And so, and for those who are hearing those questions, love, embrace, encourage. We are part of the family of God. We're not all at the same space. We're not all in the same place in our journey. You can't expect some of you who are been following Jesus for so long that someone new is at the same place as you are. And we're walking together with the hope that as we're LOFT, we're living our faith together. That's who we are, and that's where God's called us to be. All right, one last one, then we're going to take communion and worship together. Go for it. No, go for it.
I wanted to share one thought I had as I thought of introverts. I was actually hoping you'd ask a question that would let me answer this question because I had it ready in my phone.
What was your question?
No,
Why didn't you text it to me?
No.
You should have texted it to me.
I should have.
So I could have.
Well, the number was wrong, so I didn't want to add to the other person's text box. But no, there's one thing I was thinking of when when folks asked about introverts, asked about difficulty of getting together. Right? There's all these challenges for us to be in community. One thing that I thought about, I'm not going to embarrass anybody by naming names, but I experienced community this week, and I'm really blessed by it. We had a really rough week. Jesse was not feeling well after he got back from Korea. It was a really rough week. And the doorbell rang yesterday, and there was a giant bowl of Marry Me chicken pasta soup, garlic bread, and brownies, right?
Did you bring them?
What's that?
Did you bring home some?
No, that's just for us. The reason I bring that up is I was thinking, as I was thinking the question, sometimes I need time to think, so I apologize for adding to the time here. But I thought, sometimes it's hard to get together. Sometimes it's hard to have those planned gatherings, right? But I think part of being community is listening to for each other's needs and addressing those needs, right? So knowing that we were having a rough week, someone decided to make us this incredible meal and drive it all the way up to our house and drop it off for us. And I think the flip side of that is for us to be vulnerable enough to admit that we need the help and that we are struggling. And so maybe a meal is what helps, right? Maybe it's not always a conversation. Maybe it's something as simple as a meal goes a long way. So I would just encourage you that way too. Those of you who have young kids, one other thing I was thinking of was I think we're always thinking we should always do life with people that are at the same stage of life as us. And I would encourage you to look beyond that, especially as I look around this room. There are many of us in different stages of life, especially those of us who might be parents or grandparents. I think we should take advantage of the fact that we are living life together or living our faith together with people in different life stages. And so I think for those of you who have little kids, maybe it's hard to get together with other people. Take advantage of those of us who have older kids that maybe have the bandwidth or have the space to entertain you and your kids. I'm volunteering my house. You can come over with your little ones anytime. We love having you over. But I'm not saying that to say that just for myself, but I would encourage those of us in different life stages, make yourself available for those that perhaps are coming up behind you or even ahead of you in life and can share wisdom, can share just bandwidth to do this life together. So just wanted to leave that out there too. And thank you for the soup.